Imagine waking up one morning and the world feels wrong. The streets are strangely quiet. The news is filled with reports of bizarre, violent attacks. And when you look out your window, you see your neighbor, not smiling, but sprinting towards someone, eyes filled with rage. A virus has spread, one that hijacks the brain, strips away reason, and leaves only hunger and aggression behind. Now, you might be thinking, zombies aren't real. They're Hollywood monsters. But the terrifying truth is that nature has already invented zombies. Just not in humans. Not yet. Let's start with rabies. Rabies is one of the most horrifying viruses on Earth, and it's been around for thousands of years. Once symptoms start, rabies is almost always 100% fatal. It spreads through bites, attacks the brain, and makes the host aggressive and irrational. Think about that. A virus that literally rewires the brain to spread itself by forcing the victim to bite others. That's already one step away from a zombie scenario. The only reason rabies hasn't ended humanity is because it spreads slowly and takes weeks to show symptoms. But if rabies mutated to spread like the flu, we'd be in serious trouble. And rabies isn't the only example. There's a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. It infects rats, crawls into their brains, and does something terrifying. It removes their natural fear of cats. In fact, infected rats are drawn to the smell of cat urine, practically walking to their death so the parasite can complete its life cycle inside the cat. And then there's Cordyceps, the infamous zombie fungus. In ants, Cordyceps takes over the nervous system, forcing them to climb too high branches, clamp their jaws onto a leaf, and die there so the fungus can sprout out of their bodies and spread spores. It's so bizarre and terrifying that it inspired The Last of Us. If fungi and parasites can do this to ants and rats, who's to say evolution couldn't throw us a curveball? So let's imagine it happens. A new virus emerges. Maybe it jumps from an animal to a human, or it leaks from a lab. Patient zero could be anyone. At first, the symptoms look like the flu, fever, but then something changes. The virus reaches the brain. The victim becomes paranoid, aggressive, and violent. They attack, and through their saliva, the virus spreads. At first, the cases wouldn't seem connected at all. Just a few random violent assaults scattered across the city. But within days, hospitals would be overflowing with patients that doctors simply couldn't control. And then the news channels will begin reporting on a strange wave of unexplained violence spreading from neighborhood to neighborhood. By the time anyone realized what was really happening, it wouldn't be a local problem anymore. It would already be everywhere. Viruses don't wait for us to understand them. From one city to the next, carried quietly before anyone realizes what's happening. Airports, buses, and trains turn into unknowing delivery systems, moving the infection across borders and oceans long before the world is ready to respond. Governments would rush to contain it, announcing quarantine zones, curfews, lockdowns, and roadblocks. But if recent years have shown us anything, it's that people don't always follow the rules. Some would panic and flee, others would ignore the warnings, and every choice like that would only give the virus more chances to spread. And every delay would give the virus time to thrive. Within just a few weeks, life in the cities would start to break down. Grocery stores would run out of food, pharmacies would be emptied of medicine, and even gas stations could become dangerous places. Social media would fill with shaky phone videos, people sharing what they'd seen, trying to make sense of the chaos. Even as things kept getting worse, the police would be overwhelmed, emergency rooms would collapse, and then the power grid would start failing, not because of the virus, but because the workers keeping the lights on would stop showing up. Imagine walking through your city and realizing it's completely silent. There are no cars on the roads, no music coming from shops, and none of the normal sounds of daily life. The streets look empty, but every now and then you notice movement in the distance. And sometimes you hear a sound that reminds you that you're not as alone as you thought. Daily survival would look nothing like the world we know. Food and clean water would become currency. People would board up their homes, only to realize supplies don't last forever. Every trip outside would be a risk, not just from the infected, but from desperate survivors willing to fight for the last can of food. And here's the scariest part. The infected wouldn't look like Hollywood zombies. They'd look like people. People who are alive, breathing, but stripped of all reason. People you might have known. Could humanity fight back? Maybe the scientists would race to develop a cure or a vaccine. But vaccines take years to create, test, and distribute. The military might bomb entire neighborhoods, burning everything to slow the spread. Survivors would form groups, barricading themselves in abandoned schools, warehouses, or farms. But history shows us something chilling. In disasters, humans often turn against each other. Fear, distrust, and desperation could be more dangerous than the infection itself. And what about the long-term future? If the virus burned too hot, killing people too fast, maybe it would wipe itself out. But if it found the perfect balance, if it spread quickly enough, while keeping hosts alive long enough to attack others, it could linger for decades. Civilization itself could collapse. Imagine walking through a world where forests are growing through the windows of empty skyscrapers, where highways are breaking apart as grass and trees push their way through the cracks, and wild animals freely roam through the streets of cities that once belonged to us. Imagine humanity reduced to scattered groups of survivors, telling stories about the old world, about smartphones, airplanes, electricity, stories their children might not even believe. Scientists have already experimented with viruses in labs, combining traits to study their behavior. They've already seen experiments where rabies is combined with other viral backbones, and they've studied fungi and parasites that can completely change the behavior of their hosts. Nature is already showing us the blueprints. All it would take is one mutation and one accident. So what if a zombie virus outbreak happened? Maybe it wouldn't look exactly like the movies. You wouldn't see rotting corpses climbing out of graves, but an infection that spreads through bites, hijacks human brains, and collapses society in weeks. That's not just possible. It's closer to reality than we want to admit. The question isn't whether zombies exist. The question is, if the virus ever emerges, would we survive?